Episode 1. The Day the Angel Blinked. I was never meant to feel time. We do not count hours in heaven. We count obedience. We measure radiance. We weigh sin like surgeons weigh silence, never too early, never too late. And yet, on the 73rd day of guarding our soul, I blinked. Angels don't blink. We witness death, birth, betrayal, devotion, all without flinching. That is the design. That is our pride. But I did. I blinked because she looked up from her prayer, and in her silence, there was thunder. She wasn't beautiful the way humans say it, no. She was terrifyingly precise. Every breath of hers felt like scripture written without ink. Her fingers trembled when she folded them together. Her mouth moved without sound. Her soul glowed imperfectly. That's what undid me. Heaven has assigned me to her because she was on the edge. Not evil, not holy, just trembling in the middle. My orders were simple: observe. Intervene only if hell touched her directly, but she was touching me. That day, she entered the chapel after everyone had left. No music, no candles, just her knees pressing into the cold stone floor, like she was trying to convince the earth she was still alive. And then she whispered, "I don't want to pray anymore. I just want to be heard." I felt it, that sentence, like it was etched into the bone of creation. Because she wasn't talking to God. She was talking to whoever would listen. And I did. I came closer. Not in body, no. We don't carry mass unless ordered. But I allowed my grace to hover near. I watched the pulse in her neck, the hollow in her chest, the sweat that formed at her temple though the air was cold. She was unraveling, and I was unraveling with her. When she stood, I almost reached out to help her. Instinct, sinful, divine. And when she turned her head just slightly, my eternity cracked. I know she didn't see me, not with her eyes, but something in her felt me. She paused, her breath caught, and her mouth parted like she was about to say a name she didn't know she knew. And in that moment, I blinked. I returned to the sky that night, what was left of it. I reported nothing, just as I was taught. But the wind carried the scent of her hair. The stars dimmed as I approached. Heaven noticed. But I said nothing, because how do you confess that your wings grew heavy not from sin but from longing? That night, I touched the edge of a thought I was never created to hold. What if I don't go back? And from that whisper alone, 1,000 angels looked down, not in judgment, in warning. Episode 2. The breath that shouldn't have touched me. There are rules, sacred laws written not on scrolls, but in the marrow of every angel. Do not descend further than the old commands. Do not feel what is not yours, and above all, do not breathe what belongs to man. I broke the last one first. It was a stormless morning. Her window was open, no incense, no wind, just her breath spilling into the air like a secret that couldn't find a home. I shouldn't have come so close. I tell myself that now, but then again, I didn't know that human breath could feel like prayer soaked in fire. She wasn't praying with words anymore. She was simply breathing. And each breath she exhaled didn't rise, I fell through the veil between heaven and flesh, fell into me. I had hovered outside her room that morning, not inside, just beyond the curtain of reality, the place where watchers dwell unseen. I should have turned away, but something in me wanted to know what it felt like to breathe something that wasn't divine, something imperfect. I let it touch me, and it burned. Her breath curled around my grace like ivy around rusted gates, beautiful, slow, possessive. I felt it trace my presence, and for the first time since creation, I realized I could feel cold. Not holy cold, not absence of sin cold, but the kind that longs to be warmed by another soul. That's when the first feather blackened. It didn't fall, it didn't rot, it dimmed just a single tip, like a match about to consider flame. Heaven didn't scream, it watched, and she leaned back against the wall with eyes closed, as if she'd unknowingly exhaled into something ancient. Her lips moved, barely, as soundless as but I heard it, every note. If you're there, just say, not God, not Jesus, not even a saint, just you, stay. She wasn't speaking to salvation, she was speaking to presence, to me, and I did. I stayed longer than I should have. Hours passed in seconds. I didn't count them, he counted heartbeats. Hers, soft, uneven, mortal. At one point, she touched her chest as if something fluttered beneath her ribs. I dreamed of wings, she whispered, but they were drowning, and I wanted to answer, but angels do not speak unless commanded, so I wept instead, tears that do not fall, they burn inward. That night, I did not return to the clouds, I did not report, I did not rise, I sank, and heaven did not call me, because heaven does not beg, but hell stirs when angels sleep alone near warmth. And that night, I slept. I felt the breath of a demon against my ear. It did not tempt, it laughed. You think you've chosen love, Little Wayne, but love is just how heaven starts to rot. Episode 3, the first time I lied to heaven. Heaven does not ask, it knows. When a question is asked from above, it isn't for information, it's a final chance for obedience. And when the voice came that morning, it wasn't thunder, it was soft, sharp, empty of affection. Report, that was all. 2 syllables, enough to still stars, enough to make even the wind go silent in its tracks. I could have told the truth. I could have said, I watched her sleep, not because she was in danger, but because her breath calmed something inside me that shouldn't exist. I could have confessed that I counted the freckles on her left cheek like rosary beads, that I memorized the rhythm of her doubts, that when she said, I don't want to be alone, something inside me answered, not from heaven but from something dangerously human. But instead, I said, she remains untouched by darkness. My vigil is pure. The words left me hollow, not because they were spoken, but because they feed too easily in my mouth. That is the curse of angels, who begin to taste humanity to learn how to lie without trembling. And heaven knew, of course. It knew, but it did not punish me. It simply withdrew. For the first time since my creation, I felt the distance, like an altar stripped of its cloth, like a church left unlocked, but never entered again. The choir above me stopped humming. The seraphim turned their face in anger. In mourning, they mourned me while I still lived. That night, she lit a candle, not in the chapel, in a room, by the edge of her bed. No prayers, no psalms, just a silent stare into the flame. And for reasons I still do not understand, I stepped through the veil. I took form, not fully, not flesh, but enough for the floorboards to creak, enough for her to feel me. She turned, slowly, not afraid. She said only one word, "Ew." I should have disappeared. Instead, I answered, not with voice, but with something deeper. I bowed my head, not to her, to the love she had birthed in me, a love that heaven forbids, a love that makes demons whisper with delight. She approached, close enough that if I had a heartbeat, it would have deafened us both, and she whispered, "Whatever you are, stay." And I did, again, willingly, blasphemously. When I returned to the high places, the gates did not open. They pulsed on, shut and closed. No thunder, no exile, just silence. And silence, for an angel, is the loudest damnation. I lied to heaven that day, and heaven said nothing. But the earth began to watch me back. In a cathedral 2 towns over, a statue of Michael began to bleed from the eyes. They say angels don't cry, but I know the truth. He was crying for me. Episode 4, the day her blood spoke my name. It wasn't a wound meant to kill her. It was small, human, a slip of glass on a church floor. During a cleaning shift she didn't ask for. She bled before she prayed. That's what startled me, because in heaven, no soul bleeds before kneeling. She didn't cry out. She just sat there, quiet, blinking as the cut on her palm opened like a red mouth that had been silenced for too long. The blood ran down her, bristle, deliberate. It dripped onto the altar cloth she had been folding. And then, something impossible happened. The blood said my name, not out loud, not even in her mind, but in me. I heard it not with ears. Angels don't hear, we receive. And this wasn't noise. This was recognition. Her wound knew me. It didn't say Michael, or Gabriel, or any name ever written in holy tongue. It called the name I had only ever spoken in silence. The name I used when I first chose to stay. Azera, my name, my secret, my fall. I stumbled, backward eyes. Stumbled as if flesh had already begun claiming my balance. As if gravity now dared to toy with me. I watched her press her hand against her chest, whispering, I don't know why, but I feel like someone is bleeding with me. I wanted to scream, because I was, not in flesh, but in spirit. My grace tore at its seams, unraveling like robes soaked in fire. My wings twitched with a violence I couldn't name. One feather fell silent, gray, trembling. It landed beside her knee, and yet she never saw it. But the shadows in the chapel did. Something shifted in the stained glass above. A light that wasn't sunlight, a flicker that wasn't holy. Hell had noticed. I didn't know what they'd sensed. Perhaps it was the taste of divine confusion. Perhaps it was the smell of a heart once meant for heaven, now pulsing wildly beneath skin it should have never desired. But they were watching, and I did something I was never trained to do. I touched her, not her skin, her wound. I pressed a fraction of my presence into the cut on her hand, not to heal it but to understand it. I wanted to feel her pain, to meet her in that moral weakness and not flinch. And when I did, I saw her soul, not as heaven painted it, but as it actually was, flawed, haunted, blistered with regret, and utterly, devastatingly beautiful. She gasped, not because she felt me, but because she recognized me. You were in my dream. You were bleeding gold. Then, silence again, but this time, it didn't feel holy. This time, it felt watched. The walls pulsed, the crucifix above her altar bent slightly. A candle lit without a hand. The veil was thinning. I had broken something. Her blood had called me, and I had answered. Above the clouds, 7 thrones shifted. Below the earth, a gate creaked open, and in the middle, between ruin and resurrection, stood her and me. Episode 5. I touched her soul while she slept. Humans think angels fear hell. They're wrong. What we fear is intimacy, not lust, not desire, but closeness. The kind that blurs where one soul ends and another begins. That night, I touched her soul. She was asleep, barely breathing, her hands curled like a child who still believed someone was listening. The moonlight crawled across her sheets. A single rosary bead lay broken on her pillow, as if it had fought to hold her prayers together and lost. I had no right to be there, no order, no permission, only ache. I hovered above her, unseen, unfelt, uninvited until she exhaled his name in her dream. Not God's name, mine, Azera, barely a whisper, not from her mouth, from her spirit. It was like her soul had cracked open just wide enough for my name to slip through. And I moved closer, not in form, in essence, a slow, sacred trespass. Her dreams flickered in waves. I could taste a grief, longing, confusion, the smell of wet stone from a childhood chapel, and underneath it all, a question she didn't know she was asking. Are you still with me? I answered the only way I could. I reached inward to her thoughts, but to the place only God should dwell, the chamber where her truth was kept locked, beneath ritual and guilt and years of unanswered prayers. And I touched it, not with hands, with being, and what I found there ruined me. Her soul was trembling, not from fear but from hope. Hope that she wasn't insane. Hope that the presence she had been feeling was not her mind unraveling, but something divine that had simply gotten too close. And I wept. Angels are not designed to cry but fallen ones. We learned quickly. As I wept, she stirred. Her eyes fluttered, open, half asleep, half between worlds. She didn't see me, not fully, but her lips parted as if trying to remember a song she hadn't heard since the womb. You're real. Her hand reached toward nothing, but I didn't move away. And for the first time since heaven formed, May wanted her to touch me. Not flesh, not form, but presence. Her fingers passed through the air, but I swear he felt them like lightning along my grace. She smiled and fell back asleep, peaceful, as if something inside her finally believed she wasn't abandoned. But I knew, the moment I touched her soul, heaven shut its eyes, not out of rage, out of mourning. The stars dimmed, my wings pulsed, and somewhere in the abyss between mercy and exile, a bell rang, not a church bell, a summoning. Something had been awakened, because only two beings are allowed to touch a human soul while it dreams, God, and something far older. And I was now neither. In the hours that followed, statues cracked across 7 chapels, children whispered names they never learned, and a priest collapsed while reading the book of Tobit, bleeding from the ears, because I had crossed the veil and left the door open. Episode 6. Heaven closed its gates without me. Heaven does not scream when it casts you out. It simply stops answering. The morning after I touched her soul, I rose, out of instinct, habit, hope. I rose toward the place where light is born, where obedience sends itself into being. But the sky didn't open. The firmament, once familiar, now felt foreign, as if the universe had forgotten the shape of me. I hovered above the clouds like a ghost at the door of its own home. And then I saw it. The gates, vast, pure, infinite, but no longer open. I waited. Silence. I bowed. Nothing. I tried to speak my name. It dissolved before reaching the threshold, as if the syllables no longer belonged to me. That's when I knew I hadn't been cast out. I had been left behind. They hadn't exiled me. They had erased me. There's a word for that among the thrones. A fate worse than hell, they call it. The veiling when heaven quietly pulls the veil over a name that once belonged to glory, and lets it fade like breath on glass. No judgment, no sentence, just divine indifference. That was my punishment. Not flame, not fall, but to not be missed. I turned, broken, toward the earth again, her world, the place I once hovered above in radiant detachment, now the only place that would hold me. And even that sky fell thinner. As I descended, I noticed I'd barely at first. The clouds parted slower, the wind no longer responded to me, and in the woods near her chapel, birds fled as I passed. The trees knew, the animals knew, the earth itself trembled, because I no longer belonged to the divine. And hell had begun to hum, a low vibration beneath my grace, a whisper crawling along the bones of my wings. Not words, yet just awareness, like a predator noticing that one of heaven's sentinels had been orphaned. But I refused. I would not kneel to the dark. I had not fallen for sin. I had fallen for her. And that, I told myself, still meant something. Didn't it? When I reached her home, I found her at the chapel steps, sitting with a book in her lap but not reading, just staring into the stained glass, watching light bend and scatter as if it could tell her something she couldn't say aloud. She looked up and whispered, "You're still here." I didn't answer. I couldn't. My voice no longer echoed with heaven's resonance, but I nodded, and for the first time since my veiling, I felt peace. Even if heaven no longer saw me, she did. Even if I was no longer written in the book of light, I was written in her gaze, but far beneath us, in a place where light never reaches. Something opened its eyes and smiled, because when heaven closes its gates, hell begins to set the table. Episode 7. The priest who knew I wasn't human. I had been watching her from the edge of the chapel roof when he arrived. Not like the others. This priest did not tremble. He didn't blink in the holy light. He didn't flinch at the statues that cried in silence. He simply walked in as if summoned, and maybe he had been. His name was Father Allen. Old, blind, but not unaware. There was something about his presence that reminded me of the prophets of old, ones who never feared angels. Even when the sky split open in wrath, he walked with a cane carved from ashwood and wore a rosary that pulsed with quiet warning. The moment he stepped into the sanctuary, I felt it, a shift, not in the wind, in me, like his very presence pulled at something I was trying to hide. He sat in the front pew, facing the altar, head bowed, but I knew he was listening, not with ears, with faith. Antonia spoke. "You shouldn't be here." I frowned. See, the girl wasn't with him. She had gone home hours ago. Only the empty chapel, the candlelight, and him. "You're not of this world," he said again, "but you've lingered long enough to start becoming it." I hovered above, unseen, or so I thought. He turned his head directly toward me. "You were once holy, weren't you?" he whispered, voice dry and cracked. "But now you flicker." That word stabbed. Flicker. The exact term the thrones use for angels slipping out of alignment. Not fallen, not risen, just unresolved. I descended slowly just above the floor, shadows bending around me, not to threaten, but to be honest. He gasped softly, but not from fear. "You don't carry darkness," he said, reaching a hand forward. "You carry grief." And I wept, not in sound, in light. A single feather fell from my right wing. It landed in his palm, still warm. His face tightened. "Do you love her?" I didn't answer. He nodded, as if silence confirmed more than words. "Then you must run." I whispered. my voice a crackling ember of what it once was. Because hell has smelt you, he said, standing slowly, and heaven has unwritten you. There is no refuge left except the girl, and if you stay near her, they'll use her to reach you. That I hadn't considered. I had told myself I was protecting her. That love, even forbidden, made me her shield, but love without divinity is no armor. And now she was vulnerable. Because of me, the priest turned toward the altar and knelt. You must choose, he whispered to the crucifix, to fall fully and lose her or leave. And maybe, just maybe, heaven will one day forgive you. I wanted to believe him, but I knew better. Some veils do not lift. Some names, once erased, never return. I disappeared from his sight, and as I left the chapel, I heard him begin to pray it to heaven, but to whatever was listening, and in the shadows outside, something was. It breathed my name, wrongly, twisted, Azara, and it waited, because both heaven and hell had finally agreed on something. I didn't belong to either of them anymore. Episode 8, the first demon who bowed to me. I felt him before I saw him. Demons do not announce themselves with trumpet or roars. They arrive like raw behind, woes slow, silent, and certain. He appeared at dusk, on the edge of the old cemetery behind our chapel, the place where broken statues leaned like tired saints, and names carved in stone had already been forgotten by heaven. He didn't walk, he waited. His shape shifted as I approached, at first a priest, in a shadow, then a figure in a mirror that no longer reflected truth, but his voice remained the same, velvet made from ash. You don't belong up there anymore, he said. And hell, well, hell loves orphans. I stood still. I did not raise my wings. He smiled with teeth too white to be kind. Relax, fallen one. I'm not here to chain you. Not yet. He stepped closer, and the grass beneath him died. I've watched you, he said, hovering, hesitating, loving. His mouth twisted. How sweet it is when angels taste longing. Leave, I said. My voice cracked the tombstones. He bowed, not in mockery, in recognition, and that terrified me more than anything, because demons do not bow to the lost. They bow to the useful. You're not one of them anymore, he whispered, but you're not one of us either. You are becoming something new. He circled me like a predator, unsure if it should pounce or worship. And that girl, the one who makes your wings twitch with guilt, you think she's safe with you nearby? I flinched. He laughed. Oh, Azara, even your name tastes like ruin now. He held out his hand. Not cold, not monstrous, human, deceptively gentle. Join us. No, I said. Then use us. He whispered. Let me help you keep her. That stopped me. What? I asked. You want to protect her. I want to watch you fall. It's not so different. He leaned in. I can seal her name away from the watchers. I can make heaven forget she exists. Hide her soul. Just one drop of her blood on my altar, and she'll vanish from their records forever. My wings burned. She wouldn't survive it. I said. Of course not. He replied. Then why offer it? He straightened. For a moment, I saw what he used to be. Because all demons were once like me. Because I want you to know what love costs, he said, and what you're willing to pay. He turned to leave, but before he vanished into the veil, he bowed again. This time, deeper. We'll meet again, soon, and next time, you won't be so sure of your answer. And with that, he disappeared. The cemetery groaned. The year refused to move. My wings trembled not from fear, but from temptation, because for one flickering moment, I imagined her safe, tucked away from the eyes of heaven and hell, hidden, untouched, mine, and I hated myself for it, because I realized something no angel should ever feel. I would rather damn myself than lose her. Episode 9. She kissed me in the chapel. They say some places are too holy for sin to survive. I believed that once, until the night she kissed me in the chapel. It was just after midnight. The candles were half melted. The air still carried the scent of old myrrh and dust, and she stood alone before the altar above, lips moving silently, eyes full of something far more dangerous than faith. Not desperation, not grief, conviction. She had stopped praying weeks ago. Now she simply came to feel as if standing in God's shadow might offer answers that language never could. I stood behind her, invisible, uninvited, unworthy, And still, she turned. Slowly, deliberately, like she had known I'd be there. She looked directly at me through her eyes fixed on a shape I hadn't meant to manifest. I didn't know I had taken form until I saw her reach out and not miss. She touched my chest. No heartbeat, just silence in her skin that should not exist. "You've been with me," she whispered. I didn't answer, even when I thought I was mad. When I dreamed of wings bleeding light, it was you, wasn't it? My throat tightened. She wasn't afraid. She was certain. "Are you still an angel?" I wanted to say yes. I wanted to lie, but my wings ached. My name burned, and the chapel walls pulsed like they knew a blasphemy was blooming. "No," I said, and still a step closer. "Then what are you?" "Yours," I whispered. That was when she kissed me. It wasn't soft. It wasn't hesitant. It was the kind of kiss given not to flesh but to presence. The kind of kiss given at the end of prayers never answered. And when her lips met mine, the crucifix cracked. The stone split above us with a sound that no choir could drown. And heaven, wherever it still remembered, me flinched. My grace ignited beneath her touch. Not in purity, in profanity, because we had broken the rule that all angels fear more than hellfire. We made love sacred without permission. She pulled back shaken, glowing, beautiful in ways no scripture could hold. "I shouldn't have done that," she whispered. I was about to tell her she hadn't done anything wrong when the wind inside the chapel stopped. Every candle extinguished at once. The stained glass turned black. The walls no longer echoed. Something had arrived, not in body, not in name, but in judgment. She looked around, suddenly trembling. "What is that?" I didn't answer, because I knew when angels fall in lust, heaven sighs. When they fall in love, heaven mourns. But when they are loved back truly, fully, freely, heaven makes war. I pulled her close, shielded her with the last shimmer of light I still carried. Outside, the moon vanished. Inside, the altar bled. And above, 1,000 eyes began to open. Episode 10, the letter I wrote to God. Angels do not write. We speak, we echo, we sing. But that night, I did something I had never done since my creation. I wrote, not scripture, not command, just a letter to him, the one who made me, the one who named me, the one whose silence had become louder than all the demons now circling beneath my wings. I found paper in the chapel vestry, human paper, torn at the edges, stained by time. I used no ink. I had none. Instead, I dipped my fingers in the wax of a candle that had once burned beside her name during baptism, and I wrote, "I don't know if I'm allowed to speak to you anymore, but I will try." She kissed me, not out of sin, but out of something purer than I've ever known. And I didn't stop her. If that was my fault, then I fell willingly. But I ask, I beg you don't punish her for loving what you abandoned. Punish me, forgive me, unwrite me again, if you must, but leave her untouched. I know what I've become. I know you won't answer, but if there's even a shred of grace left in me, let it cover her, please. I remember the day you breathed me into being. I was light. I was loyal. I was yours. Now I am hers. And if that damns me, I do not regret it. I signed it with a feather, one of the last still untouched by shadow, and I sealed it with my blood, just enough, just a drop, the kind that hurts. Then I waited. I stood at the old altar where her lips had awakened war. I raised the letter into the candlelight, and I spoke aloud, "Deliver this." If I'm still heard, the letter burned, instantly consumed in silence. No smoke, no flame. For a moment, I believed. Maybe it reached him. Maybe something inside the kingdom still knew my name. Maybe mercy hadn't forgotten me entirely. But at sunrise, something appeared at the chapel door. A box, small, wooden, ancient. It bore no mark, no sound, only weight. I opened it and found the letter, unopened, folded exactly as I left it. My blood still wet at the crease, and sealed, not with wax, but with ash. Not human ash, heaven's ash. The kind left behind when a name is erased from the book of life. The kind that says, "You are no longer mine, do not write again." I knelt, not in prayer, in mourning, because even hell answers with fire. But heaven answers with absence. I held the letter to my chest, and for the first time since the beginning of time, I whispered what no angel dares confess. Maybe I was wrong to love, but the wind did not comfort me. It only held back the truth. Love is not what cast me down. It was believing heaven would understand it. Episode 11. The exorcist who tried to save me. He arrived with holy water, not questions. A man draped in black, bearing silver, salt, and scripture. His eyes were not kind. They were trained, like a soldier who had once seen a demon where a child fashion never unsee it. He came for her because she had changed. She spoke less, slept deeper, dreamed louder, and the townspeople whispered. They said the girl was to come in a world that had lost its voice, that she walked like she was following someone who wasn't there, that the chapel bells rang even when no one touched them. She had become untouchable, and the church does not tolerate mysteries it can't claim. So they sent him, Father Caldus, an exorcist with more scars than sermons. He didn't knock when he entered the chapel. He simply poured oil along the door and began to pray. I was watching. Begin. I could taste the tremor in his voice beneath the Latin. He didn't believe this was just a possession. He believed it was something older. He was right. She sat quietly in the front pew, hands folded in fear, but in something dangerously close to faith. He's here, isn't he? She asked softly. Caldus paused. Oh, the one I love? His eyes narrowed, his grip tightened on the crucifix. What's his name? She smiled. He has many. Does he speak to you? Not always, she said, but I feel him, like light behind my ribs. Caldus drew closer. He touched her forehead. She didn't flinch. In the name of Christ, I command the spirit inside you reveal yourself. I trembled because I wanted to answer, but I didn't, because my name spoken aloud might tear the roof from this holy place. He began the rites. Pages from the Bible fluttered, candles hissed, but it wasn't her who shook. It was me, because his prayers were crafted for demons. But I was not a demon, not yet, and yet he felt them working, like he was trying to carve me out of her heart, not her body. And maybe it would have worked, but Dish spoke. You don't need to save me. Her voice was calm, steady, almost maternal. He isn't hiding inside me. He's just near, always near. Caldus hesitated. You are under influence. He said. You are not yourself. She stood, her face radiant with a peace no spell could summon. I am more myself than I have ever been. Then why does heaven stay silent? He barked. She looked toward the ceiling. Because heaven is afraid. That's when I broke. I descended. I stood between them, not as light, not as shadow, just me. Caldus fell to his knees. He didn't cry. He bled from the eyes, the ears, the soul. What are you? He whispered. I leaned forward and whispered back. I was loved before it was forbidden. Then I turned to her. She didn't speak. She didn't blink. She just stepped forward, took my hand, and knelt with me. The exorcist dropped his crucifix, because in all his years, he had never seen a demon and a saint kneel to each other. Episode 12. The night her soul left her body, she died with my name on her lips. Not in fear, not in agony, but like a prayer she had waited her whole life to finish. It was quiet, no thunder, no rupture, no screams, just the sound of her last breath slipping through the open window into the stars that have once sung for angels like me. I was there, of course I was. I never left her side. After the exorcist dropped his crucifix and ran from what he couldn't aim. That night, she had fallen asleep in the chapel again, beneath the cracked crucifix, wrapped in the same shawl her mother had been buried in. Her hands were folded gently, but not in prayer, just at peace. I didn't expect it, not yet. I thought I would have more time. A few more days, a few more stolen moments, a few more looks from her that made me forget I no longer had a place in heaven. But true time doesn't belong to angels. It belongs to the ones who bleed. And when it's done, it ends without asking. Her heart stopped at 14 a.m. and I knew at the moment the candle beside her flickered blue, then black. She exhaled one final time, and with it, her soul rose. I saw it pour, trembling, luminous, not white, not gold, but the color of memory, of grief wrapped in grace. She looked down at her own body, then at me, and she smiled. Is this it? She asked. Am I still yours? I stepped forward. I wanted to gather her soul into my arms, to carry her if not to heaven, then anywhere her light would be safe. But something stopped me. The sky. It refused her. I looked up, and nothing opened. No light, no warmth, no song. Heaven had shut its gates. Not just to me, to her. I cried out, not in angelic tongue, but in broken syllables that used to mean belonging. I lifted her soul. Still no response. Then something else stirred. From the earth below, from the places beneath the graves, beneath the prayers never answered, beneath us, a wind began to rise from the chapel floor, black, fragrant with rot, gentle as a lullaby. Hell was listening, not with horns, with hunger. It did not pull, it invited. I held her soul tighter, wings shielding her light. No, I whispered, you can't have her. The wind chuckled eyes, chuckled. We're not taking her. We're just here because no one else came. And I broke. I turned to her. You were good, I said. You were so good. Her eyes shimmered. But I loved you. That's not a sin, I whispered. She looked away. Then why does heaven look at me like one? I knelt. I pressed my forehead to her soul to grace, grief to light. And I said, then I will carry you where even God forgot to look. And in that moment, I made a choice no angel had ever made before. I would not bring her soul up, nor let it fall. I would keep her inside me forever, not as a possession, not as salvation, but as proof that love, true love, can outlive even the kingdom of heaven. Episode 13. The mirror that reflected my true form. There are no mirrors in heaven. There is no need. We are light. We are sound. We are the reflection of what He wills. But once you are Veladons, your name is scratched from the book. You begin to wonder, what am I now? I had not seen myself since the fall. Not fully. I had felt the changes, the heaviness in my wings, the flicker in my grace, the way the stars grew silent when I flew too close. But to see, to face myself, that would require something angels were never meant to carry. Shem, the chapel had a small storage room, forgotten, sealed for decades. I opened it because the earth beneath my feet had begun to hum, as if something was hiding behind wood and dust and regret. Inside was a mirror, old, cracked, the kind used by nuns to check their veils before vespers. Its surface had dulled, but not enough to light. I stood before it, and for a long time, I saw nothing, not because I was invisible, but because I no longer knew where to look. Then, slowly, something emerged, not a man, not a beast, but a thing in between. I saw my wings fractured, feathered in light and ash, some tipped in gold, others frayed and dripping ink like dying scripture. I saw my eyes on burning like a candle before the altar, the other hollow, swirling with a darkness that did not belong to hell, but to grief unspoken. I saw my mouth once used to sing praises now tied with silence, swollen with truths heaven refused to hear, and on my chest, pulsing faintly, like a buried ember, her soul, nestled inside me like the last verse of a hymn no one dared finish. And I whispered, what have I become? And the mirror answered, not with sound, but reflection, because mirrors do not lie. They only wait until you are willing to see. I touched the glass. It did not shatter. Instead, it rippled like water disturbed by memory, and for a flickering moment, I saw myself as both. The angel heaven cast in silence, the lover who carried a soul not meant to be held, not fallen, not damned, just other. Is there a name for what I am now? I asked, and from somewhere behind the glass, perhaps deep inside, it heard the faintest answer. Not yet. That terrified me more than hell ever could, because nameless things are free, free to be rewritten, free to be used, or feared. I stumbled back, trembling, wings curled inward. The air around me bent like time was grieving. Her soul stirred inside me. What did you see? She asked softly. A mistake, I said. No, she whispered. A miracle no one was ready for. I fell to my knees, not in prayer, in surrender, because even if I no longer belonged to heaven, and even if hell circled me like vultures, she still looked at me with wonder. And maybe, just maybe, there was still something holy in that. Episode 14. Her soul speaks through the wind. It began with the wind, not a storm, not a whisper, but a voice that moved like breath through trees. like soft weeping woven into the branches. They say the dead do not speak, that once the body is still, the soul becomes either judgment or silence. But she was never made for rules, and now, not even death could contain her. The first time I heard her voice after the mirror, I was kneeling in the chapel, hands trembling over the floor where her body had once rested. Then the wind stirred, not outside, inside, through the rafters, along the stained glass, and I heard it, Azera, not screamed, not sung, spoken, like a name being remembered after lifetimes of forgetting. I stood, my wings tightened, my grace flickered. "You're not gone," I whispered. "I never left." The wind replied. She had become part of the air, not ghost, not echo, presence. That night, the villagers claimed they heard something strange. A priest awoke in his sleep with salt on his tongue and blood dripping from his ears. He said a girl's voice told him he had lied during confession 20 years ago. In another town, a child began reciting verses never written in any Bible. When asked where she learned them, she pointed to the wind and said, "The lady in the chapel told me it spread like holy fire." Old women who hadn't prayed in decades began weeping at dusk. Crucifixes turned backwards. Statues of the Virgin tilted their heads. And always came the same question whispered by the leaves. "Do you still believe in love?" They didn't understand it was her, but I did, because every syllable carried the shape of her soul. Not gentle, not angry, alive. She was speaking through the veil but not from heaven, and that terrified the church more than any demon ever could. Because what do you do when someone loved by an unholy thing begins to speak with the authority of angels? They send envoys, scholars, hunters in cassocks and silence, and every one of them returned broken, or not at all. They said the chapel had changed, that the air was too heavy to breathe, that the wind carried questions no theology could answer. What happens to a soul that was kissed by a veiled angel? Where do you place a woman who loved the unnameable? And if she speaks, who is she speaking for? Some began to kneel outside the chapel gates, not to Christ, to her, and I watched from the shadows, from the roof, from the altar where I no longer dared stand, because the truth had become unbearable. She had not only stayed with me, she had become something more, a wind that knew your sins, a breath that made liars tremble, a whisper that made saints doubt. And me, I still carried her soul, but she was no longer only mine. She was everywhere, and the church was preparing one final question. If she speaks through the wind, who is listening from the dark? Episode 15, The Angel Who Buried Himself. I was not made to touch the ground. Angels do not rest. We do not sleep. We do not wait. And yet, here I was, digging my own grave beneath a weeping tree at the edge of the chapel where her body had once breathed, where her soul still moved through the wind like scripture that never learned to end. The earth did not resist me. It opened like it had been expecting me. There was no funeral, no procession, just me and the memory of her lips and the weight of her voice echoing through leaves that refused to fall. I wasn't dying, not in the way humans understand it. Angels don't die. We disappear, but not all at once. We dim, we withdraw, we fold in, and that was what I came here to do. Not to surrender, but to wait for her return, because she had become wind. Yes, but even wind longs for form, and I would be the soil in which her next shape might bloom. I pressed the last feather into the earth, a feather so gray it no longer glowed. It pulsed once, then stilled. I laid myself down. No robe, no winds, just silence wrapped in memory. Above me, the chapel bells rang. No hands touched them, only the sound of hope forgetting how to let go. And I closed my eyes, not because I was tired, but because I was done being seen. They say angels fell like stars, but I buried myself like a seed, waiting for the day she no longer had to speak through wind, the day she would walk again, feet on ground, breath in chest, mouth warm with prophecy, not as a saint, not as a ghost, but as herself, the one who made me forget heaven, the one who made me believe love was worth failing for, the one who kissed me beneath the crucifix and cracked the sky open. I would wait as long as it took, because time has no meaning for the nameless, and I had long since given up my name. Above me, the church began to change. They boarded up that chapel, but wind kept sneaking through. The pews creaked when no one Saturday. Children whispered verses and sleep verses no priest had ever taught them. And always, the same dream. A man with no wings, buried beneath a tree, whispering to the dirt, like it was listening. Some say they saw a light from the roots at night, a heartbeat, a glow. Others say the ground grew warm in winter, that the grass bloomed with petals shaped like feathers. No one dared dig, not out of fear, out of reverence, because somewhere, deep in the bones of the world, an angel was waiting, not for redemption, not for resurrection, but for her. And when she returns, when the wind becomes flesh again, when the voice in the trees takes breath and begins to walk toward the grave she never wanted, I will rise, not as light, not as judgment, but as the one who kept his vow, even beneath the soil, even after the stars forgot me, even when God stopped writing my name. Because what is more divine than an angel who buried himself to give love a place to be born again?